The way the world's being explored in this show is really well done because the first minute or two seems to be like some backstory with Noe while simultaneously exploring the fundamentals of this vampire-driven world. And it's so interesting to just get casual drops of information being like, hey, we basically changed the construction DNA of the world, so what used to be coal is now this very beautiful thing that seemingly fuels everything, or the way vampires were made with basically the changing of what humans can be. It's such a casual way to reveal such information, and by seemingly telling it to a child, what better way for the viewers to accept info dumps than by having a kid be told a story? Some really good situations across the board for an episode that was pretty chaotic and full of mayhem. By the end of the episode, seemingly dozens of curse bearers come ravaging, eating, and pillaging, and doing some crazy things as you get some pretty big sexual tension between certain characters, and there's definitely some hate-love relationships brewing. Of course, you have certain characters like Noe saying they're just friends, but you can definitely tell that a girl whose literal name is Domi, right? And she is without a doubt a dominatrix, as someone like Noe is without a doubt the sub. You just see so many situations where you're like, my man, are you just playing dumb, or do you actually believe you guys are just friends? Because there's no way the situations that I'm looking at, the literal Dom dungeon room that I am seeing, there's no way you guys are just friends, and I don't think that's shipping, I think that's just common sense. But towards the end of the episode, I mean, if we flash back to, was it last week or the week before, I forget, but when our boy is pretty much forcing basically the romance upon this poor girl, I think her name was Jean. I mean, she comes in this episode seemingly still in a pretty forced situation, but her needing blood in order to want to save her master there. It's interesting because it was directed in a way that was definitely very sexually oriented, which vampires, I mean, used to always be a mixture of like scary, frightening action and blood-sucking, thirsty horniness. Like that's pretty much the vampire formula. And honestly, there's very few anime I can think of as of late that have even, I think, portrayed it as well as this show clearly is. I mean, some of the all-time best do it very well, whether it's live-action series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer to even certain anime series. Monogatari has it to a certain extent with its vampire arc, even Shiki to some degree, which is one of my personal favorite series. But I think just seeing a situation where you might say, why would getting your blood sucked by a vampire be pleasurable? Because clearly Vanaz is enjoying this. I'm surprised he didn't get an erection. Let's be honest here. He was blushing, he was flustered, and he was basically saying he enjoyed it. But that is part of the whole vampire thing. It doesn't exist in the real world, so we don't know what it feels like. But yeah, would I want that happen? No. But is that a pretty big staple of most vampire stories? Absolutely. I think it's a pretty interesting way to show bonding as well between humans and what is basically a vampire, right? Because it's a form of trust, and the fact that someone was willingly giving you that blood, it definitely is going to be an interesting turn of events for their relationship, because she clearly has no main interest in the guy, but obviously over the course of the story, something's gonna brew. Will it just be those like curious thoughts, or it'll be something more like she actually agrees to? It's hard to say. But to have a character that is so bold, like when he's essentially strapped up in the dungeon dominatrix chamber here, and things are being thrown his way, like, hey, I will help you if someone like Noe wants me to. I will give you the help, the resources, all this. But she doesn't trust him for obvious reasons, and he's such a very hard-to-read character because half the time, honestly, I might even say 75% of the time, when you look at Vanaz, he just seems like the villain. He always has the grin, he has the look, he has the aura that this is a bad character. But then there's so many other times you're like, wait, is this all an act to make him feel more powerful than he is so people don't mess with him? Is he just a jokester, a prankster? It's very hard to say, but that moment where he jumps on the chandelier and he announces to the world that, hey, look at my mark, this proves who I am, which is basically a death sentence because no one trusts in that book. Vampires think that book is what causes them such horrible chaos. But to have someone say he's going to use it to protect you as he's essentially threatening you, and then transitions to Full Metal Alchemist level absurdity, it's hard not to say kill the bastard. And honestly, even as someone rooting for him in more ways than one, when the vampires are all like, hey, let's go kill him, I was like, you know what, probably deserves it. I'm kind of rooting for you right here, just given it's easy to be swayed by people being like, what in the actual hell is wrong with him? There's definitely a level of uncertainty, and I would say, honestly, this show's built out of uncertainty, but it's one of those things that you just can't help but just kind of be swayed and just persuaded by a character who can be that bold while seemingly being that childish all at the same time. And I think that's what makes him such a dangerous presence, is that because he has that level of child innocence, where you get those really cute Fullmetal Alchemist comedy-directed scenes, but then you get these horrifying atmospheres where it's just like, this man could kill an army, seemingly, and probably wouldn't break a sweat doing it. I mean, if we just rewind, right, he told Noe to hold a kid hostage as he basically was threatening that he would kill said kid if she didn't do what he wanted, right? This person definitely doesn't have an issue with getting his hands dirty, and it's very uncertain where his true motives lie, and I think that's part of the charm about a show like this. You seemingly have a very, carefree, positive person like Noe, who may not have the best life every so often. I mean, he still is someone who you feel like you know what it is he wants to do in life, and even if we don't necessarily know his objective, we feel like we can get a read on him every episode, where we're now a month into this show, this book, no idea if it's actually going to be used for good or evil, and this man equally is so. I feel 50-50 on every time he's on screen, and it will be interesting to see, because the logical thought I would have is that he's going to use the book to save the curse bearers. Most likely, that would then show the people in this room, and most likely, I believe it was said to be the sister of the one character, most likely would also see. Now, say that doesn't happen, where do we go from here? It's hard to say because, Immortal's not really supposed to be there anyway, so what's going to happen afterwards? It definitely feels like we're building up to something pretty crazy by the end of the first core. We know we're getting 2 cores, the second core will be coming out next year, but still, it's one of those things that every time we get more about this parade and this very mysterious Fire Force Infernal looking character who's popping up, obviously a big bad we need to defeat, but what is the true purpose of kind of corrupting so many? Is it simply just for chaos, or is it going to be something more where, is it world domination? Is it simply wanting to control? It's hard to say, right? That's what's really fun about this, but it definitely is getting me thinking. I'm like, I can easily continue watching this weekly for the first core, but by the time we have to wait, because we'll have to wait 3 months for Core 2, am I really going to be able to wait 3 months and then watch week to week? I don't think so. I think I'm going to have to wait for the second core to be over in order to binge it, because this is a show that every time the episode starts, I feel like, okay, great weekly experience. By the end of the episode, I'm wishing I had at least a few more episodes to see where they want to go, especially an episode like this with how they ended with the romantic, sexual, and violent tension in every which direction. I wish I could watch the next 3 or 4 episodes to see where we're going to go from here. I definitely think this is one of the standout shows from the season for sure. Production, I think, remains to be on point. I love the background detail. It's probably my favorite part of this entire production. There's just so much detail to the world and environments, and even when they're just simply giving what seems to be a children's story at the beginning of the episode, the lighting and the way just the atmosphere really invokes this kind of mysterious but childlike wonder, it's really, really impressive, and I am incredibly excited for more. Violent, chaotic, romantic, sexual, it's everything I think vampire stories need to be if done right, and this one so far for a month, 4 episodes straight, has done everything right while still being its own series all at the same time. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below, your favorite moment. Where do you think it's going to go with the end of the episode? Because there's definitely a couple of possibilities, I think both of which will probably end up being bad for our characters here, whether they stop the curse bearers or not, but let me know your thoughts down below, drop a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.